Have you ever felt like you don't belong anywhere? Like you're around people, but somehow still completely alone? Like something is missing, but you can't explain what it is? You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely empty. And the worst part? You don't even know why. You laugh, you talk, you respond at the right moments. From the outside, everything looks normal, but inside, it feels different, like you're not fully there, like you're slightly disconnected from everything that's happening around you. Like you're there, but not really there, instead of actually living it. And this is where it gets confusing, because nothing is obviously wrong. No one is hurting you, no one is excluding you, and yet something feels off, something is missing. And the more time you spend around people, the more you start to notice it, that quiet emptiness, that subtle distance, that strange feeling of being alone, even when you're not. And eventually, you start asking yourself questions. Why do I feel like this? Why does everyone else seem fine? Why can't I just enjoy being around people like everyone else? And those questions don't just stay in your head, they slowly turn into doubt. Doubt about yourself, doubt about your personality, doubt about whether something is wrong with you. But here's what most people never realize. This feeling isn't random, and it's not a flaw. It's a signal, a very specific signal. And once you understand what it's trying to tell you, everything starts to make sense. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. The first reason you feel empty around others is because you're not truly connected. And that might sound obvious at first, but real connection is much deeper than just being around people. You can sit next to someone for hours, right, and still feel nothing. Because connection isn't about proximity, it's about feeling seen, feeling understood, feeling like you can be yourself without holding anything back. And if that's missing, everything starts to feel distant. Even the closest conversations, even the loudest rooms, even the people you see every day. You might still participate, you might still talk, you might still smile, but inside, there's a gap, a quiet space where connection is supposed to be, and over time, that gap starts to feel like emptiness. The second reason is something even more important. You might be disconnected from yourself, and this doesn't happen suddenly. It happens slowly, over time, in small, almost invisible ways. Maybe you've learned to adjust yourself around others, to be a little quieter, a little more agreeable, a little less you. Maybe you've learned to say the right things instead of the honest ones, to react the way people expect instead of the way you actually feel. And at first, this makes things easier. You fit in better. You avoid conflict. You become more acceptable. But there's a hidden cost, because every time you hide a part of yourself, you move a little further away from who you really are. And eventually, you don't even notice it anymore. You just feel it, as distance, as numbness, as emptiness. Because when you're not connected to yourself, you can't fully connect to anyone else, no matter how many people are around you. The third reason is this: you don't feel truly understood. And this is one of the most powerful forms of loneliness, because it doesn't come from being alone. It comes from feeling unseen. You can have conversations, you can share moments, you can even laugh with people, but deep down, you feel like no one really gets you. Not completely, not deeply. And because of that, you start to hold back. You stop saying certain things. You stop expressing certain thoughts. You keep parts of yourself hidden because you feel like they won't be understood anyway. And the more you do that, the more invisible you start to feel. Not physically, but emotionally. And that kind of invisibility creates a very specific kind of emptiness, one that stays with you, even in the middle of a crowd. And then there's another layer to this. You might be emotionally overwhelmed without even realizing it. Your mind is always active, always thinking, always analyzing, always observing. You notice things others don't. Small details, subtle reactions, changes in tone, shifts in energy. And while that awareness can be a strength, It can also be exhausting because instead of just being present, you're constantly processing, constantly interpreting, constantly in your head. And when you're in your head, you're not fully in the moment. You're not fully feeling. You're not fully connecting. You're just there. When was the last time you actually felt connected? Not because you want it, but because your mind never really lets you fully arrive. And over time, that creates distance. And if you really think about it, and there's something else most people never notice. You might have gotten used to this feeling, not consciously, but over time, it became your normal. You stopped questioning it, and slowly, you started accepting it. And instead of asking, why do I feel empty? You started thinking, this is just how it is. And that's where it becomes dangerous. Because when something feels normal, you stop trying to change it. You accept it. You adapt to it. You build your life around it. You show up in conversations, but you don't fully engage. You spend time with people, but you don't fully open up. You exist in moments, but you don't fully experience them. And little by little, you start living on the surface of your own life, not because you chose to, but because you don't remember what it feels like to go deeper. And the longer this continues, the harder it becomes to break out of it, because now it's not just a feeling anymore. It's a pattern, a way of being, a default state, and patterns don't change by accident. They continue until something interrupts them, until something makes you stop and actually look at what's going on. And maybe that moment is happening right now. Maybe this is the first time you're really putting this feeling into words, the first time you're realizing that this emptiness isn't random, that it has structure, that it has causes, that it makes sense. Think about it, because once something makes sense, it becomes less overwhelming, less confusing, less heavy, and that alone can already change how you experience it. But there's one more layer to this, and it's something people rarely talk about. Sometimes you don't feel empty because something is missing. You feel empty because you've been giving too much energy, too much attention, too much awareness to everything around you, and not enough to yourself. You focus on other people, their reactions, their expectations, their needs. You adjust, you adapt, you stay aware. And while doing that, you slowly drain your own energy until there's nothing left, and what remains feels like emptiness. Think about it. You're not empty because nothing is there. You feel empty because you've been giving everything away. So the question is not just, why do I feel empty? The real question is, where is my energy going? Where am I losing myself? Where am I giving more than I receive? Because once you start asking those questions, you shift from confusion to awareness. And awareness is where change begins. And no, this doesn't mean you have to isolate yourself. It doesn't mean you have to cut people off. It doesn't mean something is wrong with your life. It simply means you need to reconnect, not by doing more, but by becoming more present, more honest, more aware of yourself. And that doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. When you notice what you actually feel, when you say what you actually think, when you stop pretending, even just a little bit. Because the opposite of emptiness is not people, it's connection, real connection. And that starts with you. And when all of these things come together, disconnection from others, disconnection from yourself, feeling misunderstood, mental exhaustion, they create one single experience. Emptiness. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, constant, and hard to explain. But here's the most important part. This feeling is not permanent and it's not meaningless. It's actually pointing you in a direction, because that emptiness isn't there to stay. It's there to show you something, to make you aware of what's missing, not in your life, but in your connection, to yourself, to your emotions, to the way you relate to others. In the moment you start to understand that, something changes. You stop fighting the feeling. You stop judging yourself for it. And instead, you start listening. You start asking, where am I not being real? Where am I holding back? Where am I disconnecting from myself? And those questions lead you back to yourself, back to your emotions, back to what actually feels real. And slowly, very slowly, things begin to shift. You become more present, not because you force it, but because you're no longer hiding from yourself. You start expressing more, not perfectly, but honestly. You start connecting, not with everyone, but with the right people. And that's the difference. Because real connection isn't about being surrounded by people. It's about being understood. It's about being seen. It's about being able to exist without pretending. Because the truth is, you were never empty, you were just disconnected. So if you've been feeling empty around others, just know this: there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You were never empty. You were just disconnected. And once you reconnect, everything changes.